Hi, I'm Linda. This is Beautiful Thrift Homemaking, where we are this year reading through a vintage cookbook from 1917 with the rather fun title of A Thousand Ways to Please a Husband. And if this book looks a lot newer than that, yes, it is a reprint from Dover Publications. Today we're going to be reading chapters 68 and 69, and we are in the month of October. We have began in the month of June because this cookbook is also an instructional novel following the first year of married life for a fictitious couple named Bob and Bettina. And Bettina is sharing her recipes with us, as well as a lot of tips on hospitality and so forth. And so in chapter 68, chapter 68 is called Just the Two of Them. "It seems good to be alone this evening, doesn't it, Bettina?" said Bob as they sat down to dinner. "Or are you growing so accustomed to gaiety lately that a dinner for two is a bore?" "Bob," said Bettina reproachfully, "if I thought you really believed that I was ever bored by a dinner for the two of us, well, I'd never be in a wedding party again. Alice likes excitement, and I suppose that next week will be very gay. But after the wedding, I hope that you and I can have a quiet winter, with just invitations enough to keep us from becoming too stupid. But tell me what the wedding will be like. Is it all planned down to the last detail? I suppose it is, although Harry doesn't seem to have any idea what it is to be. Poor Harry, he seems to be left out of most of the showers and parties so far." "Don't pity him. He wouldn't go if he could. I'm just wondering what they'll do after the wedding. Will Alice go and Harry stay at home? Or will he be obliging and force himself to go too?" "I don't know, I'm sure. Alice is so full of life that I don't see how she can settle down and never go anywhere as Harry would have her. But time will tell. Perhaps they'll compromise. Meanwhile, we must plan some sort of a shower or prenuptial party that Harry can enjoy too. One with the men included, I mean. Of course, I know he hates parties, but I think he would really like a very jolly informal one with just a few friends." The dinner for two consisted of cold sliced lamb, baked potatoes, creamed carrots and peas, bread, butter, and apple dumplings. So in this chapter, we have Bettina's recipes for the creamed carrots and peas, as well as for the apple dumplings. Chapter 69, A Luncheon in the Country. "Oh, Charlotte, I've just come from the loveliest luncheon," said Bettina, coming face to face with Mrs. Dixon in front of her own home. "You have? Another for Alice?" "No, this was in the country, on the interurban, at Cousin Kate's. Frances, her daughter, who was married last spring, has come home on a visit, and Cousin Kate was entertaining for her." "Tell me about it." "Oh, it was just an informal luncheon, but I couldn't help thinking how delicious everything was, and at the same time inexpensive. In fact, I wrote down several of Cousin Kate's recipes after the guests had gone, and I'm sure that there aren't many such inexpensive luncheons that are also so good. You must let me have some of the recipes." "Of course I will. Come in now and copy them." "I can't possibly, Bettina. As it is, I'm afraid that Frank will be home before I am. It is almost 6 o'clock now." "Is it? Then I must hurry in and start dinner. I want to make some muffins. I hate to have Bob eat a cold dinner just because I've been out in the afternoon. In fact, I usually spend more time than usual in the morning fixing some dessert that he especially likes, if I'm to be out in the afternoon. Goodbye, Charlotte." "Goodbye, dear." The luncheon menu was as follows: oyster cocktail in pepper cases, cream of celery soup, croutons, cheese timbales, creamed peas, baked apples, baking powder biscuit, green bean salad, salted wafers, lemon sherbet, devil's food white icing, and coffee. And here we have Bettina's recipes for the oyster cocktail in pepper cases, the cheese timbales, Bettina's green string bean salad, and the devil's food cake. All right, so let's discuss these chapters. All right, so now we're going to talk about chapters 68 and 69. First of all, in just the two of them, we have Bob and Bettina having a quiet dinner at home. And I wanted to point out that there's a couple vocabulary words in this chapter that, remember, we are reading a book from 1917. So we have the word gaiety and the word gay. And gaiety is from a French word meaning happiness, and gaiety means a state of being joyful, cheerful, lively, lighthearted, or merry. And the word gay means joyful or carefree whenever you encounter it in books of this vintage. So I wanted to just clarify that, just in case you were unaware of the former beautiful meanings of the word gay. Okay, now men are left out of bridal showers, and that is the traditional way, isn't it? And here we have that. And so Bettina's wondering if perhaps she and her husband Bob should plan something so that Mr. Harrison is not left out of every party before he gets married. Now, they have a little discussion, Bob and Bettina do, about Alice's extrovert ways, and wonder how that is going to play out when she gets married to Harry, because he likes to be quiet and stay in. So they're wondering if she'll go out by herself and do all her social things alone, well, without her husband, or if, I guess the word would be independently, or whether or not he would just bite the bullet and go with her, or whether they would both stay home and she would see an end to her days of socializing. So I wonder if you know any couples who are together where one's an extrovert and the other an introvert, and how does that play out in the marriage, and what kinds of balance do they achieve? So we are dealing with fictional characters here, but this happens in real life, doesn't it? All right, now we have recipes in this chapter. We have recipes for the apple dumplings, and let's see. So that is chapter 68, and just the two of them. And we did have the creamed carrots and peas recipe also. And if you're interested in that, I'll tell you that it makes 3 portions. You take a half a cup of cooked diced carrots, half a cup of peas, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of butter, 1 tablespoon of flour, and 1/2 cup of milk. You melt the butter, add the flour and salt, gradually add the milk, cook about 2 minutes. Guess what? We're making a white sauce, aren't we? You add the peas and the carrots, and you serve it very hot. Okay, and that was served with cold sliced lamb and baked potatoes, bread and butter also. And then for dessert, we have the apple dumpling. And I thought I'd give this a try because I have a few more of my Granny Smith apples sitting out in the kitchen, waiting to be used. And so here I have to show you my little apple dumpling. So this would be similar to what it would look like when Bettina had made it. Although I will tell you that this is a very amateur attempt here on my part. So you can see that it is just a little biscuit dough wrapped around some apple that has been coated with cinnamon and sugar. So if I were to break into this, you would be able to see the apple covered with cinnamon sugar in there. Okay. And the dough is thin. So I did have trouble making this because I'm not that great at I'm not that great at rolling out dough. Making pie crusts is what it reminded me of. although it reminded me of a biscuit dough. So what it is you mix flour, baking powder, and salt. It's a half a cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/8 a teaspoon of salt. Then you cut in the lard with a knife. For this, I used butter, and I used the 1 tablespoon of butter, or as she says, lard. Then you add the liquid, mixing into a soft dough. So the liquid was 2 tablespoons of milk. So I did that, and I used her method of cutting in with a knife, and then I mixed up the cutting in the butter with a knife, and then I mixed up the dough, and it was a sticky dough, and you had to put some more flour on it. When you roll it out on a well-floured board to 1/4 of an inch in thickness. Then you wash, pare, and quarter the apples. Sprinkle with sugar and cinnamon, which is 1/2 a teaspoon of cinnamon added with 4 tablespoons of sugar. And that was plenty. So what I did was I put the sliced apples in a bowl that already had the cinnamon sugar mixed in it. And then I stirred that around so that the apples were covered nicely with that powdered sweetness. Cut the dough in 5-inch squares. Place 2/4 of apple in the center of a square. Moisten the edges of the dough with water and bring the 4 corners together around the apple. Place in a tin pan and bake in a moderate oven until the apples are soft, about 30 minutes. Serve warm with cream. Well, I had trouble doing this, but you can see that I kind of did it, where I brought the corner up and pinched it together with wet fingers. And so I tried to do that on each edge to make the little enclosure over those apples. So, and I baked this in a cake pan, a metal cake pan, a round one. I had a lot of apples left. I had used, it says 2 apples, and I totally missed that part, and I used 4 small apples. That's why I had so many apples left. So I just softened those apples in the microwave and ate them separately myself. And then the family ate these little apple dumplings, and my husband actually said he liked them. So they did bake for 30 minutes at 350. So that's my moderate oven temperature. And I think the dough got completely baked just right, but the apples were still a little soft, maybe because I was using Granny Smith, which are quite a firm apple. Perhaps if I had used a Golden Delicious, it would have baked more softly. All right, so those were the apple dumplings from chapter 68. Now on to chapter 69, a luncheon in the country. You have Cousin Kate and her married daughter Frances hosting Bettina over for a luncheon. And it is, she said, the menu was delicious and inexpensive. So she wanted all the recipes and she wrote them down and brought them home. And then she ran into Charlotte, Mrs. Dixon, walking by, and she invited her in to copy the recipes that she had just brought home. And Mrs. Dixon didn't have time to do that, but she sure does want to another time. And I'm wondering, do you ever copy recipes from a friend? And do you ever hand copy recipes onto index cards? That's the way it used to be done, of course. Now, I have the recipes here in this chapter of A Luncheon in the Country for the oyster cocktail in pepper cases. And so I wanted to tell you what that is. Those are 6 green peppers, and I do believe she's talking about bell peppers. You cut the stem end from the sweet green peppers, remove the seeds, and allow to stand in iced water. Pick over the oysters to remove any shells. That's 1 pint of oysters. Surround with chipped ice until ready to serve. So you're going to keep them refrigerated really well, right? And chill, get the oysters chilled. Then you're going to mix together 5 tablespoons of tomato ketchup, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, 1 tablespoon of horseradish, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of Tabasco sauce. Isn't that interesting? So obviously Tabasco sauce has been around since at least 1917. Fill each pepper with 4 oysters and put on a tablespoon of the mixture on the top. Serve very cold. All right, so that's not something I'm likely at all to make because my husband won't eat oysters, but that is a nice sauce that they put on it here in this recipe. Now I looked up this other thing, the timbales, and I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right. I meant to look up the pronunciation of that word. It's Timbales, Timbales, and they're called cheese timbales. And apparently a timbale is a drum, and so these are, this is a food cooked, it's a custard cooked in a mold that is a metal mold that is shaped like that drum, the timbale drum. So it's slightly tapered at the bottom, just slightly, and then you invert it when you serve it and bring it out of the mold. So this is a savory custard. And you could use a ramekin dish also if you don't have any of those molds. And I'll show you how this is made for 6 portions. For the cheese timbales, 1 tablespoon of butter, 1 tablespoon of flour, 1/2 cup of milk, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of paprika, 1/4 cup of fresh soft breadcrumbs, 1/4 cup of grated American cheese, and 1 egg. Melt the butter, add the flour, salt, and paprika. Mix well. Gradually add the milk, cheese, and breadcrumbs. Cook 3 minutes and then stir in the egg well beaten. Butter 6 timbale molds well. Place the cups in a pan of hot water and cook 15 minutes in a moderate oven. Allow to stand 3 minutes and remove from the molds. Serve hot with creamed peas. That actually sounds very tasty to me. Even with the creamed peas on the side, it sounds like a good combination. So you have a cheesy custard. Nice. All right, and then we had a green bean salad and devil's food cake as the rest of the menu there. Now, one other thing that I wanted to tell you was that I made another recipe from our book from a very recent episode when we were reading chapter 66. There was a recipe for marble cake, and I was intrigued by that and wanted to give it a try. So I'm going to have some photos of that, how it came out, looking down on the top of the loaf pan as it came out of the oven, and then seeing what it looks like sliced on a plate. In the meantime, I'm opening a bag here, and I'm going to show you what that marbled cake looks like, although I don't want to get crumbs all over my book, so I'm going to set my book aside here. Alrighty, so here's what's left of our loaf, and here's what the marbled loaf looks like. All right, so you can see the marbling even on the outside there in the top. So I'll let you know about that marble cake. It turns out that the dark portion is flavored with molasses and the fall spices such as cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg. And so this dark portion did taste like gingerbread, kind of a mild gingerbread. And then the white portion, it didn't have much of a flavor, though it was flavored with some vanilla. And then I wanted to tell you that I think that the whole texture came out very consistent. It had a nice texture to it. It was not overly sweet. But what I thought was fascinating, one reason I wanted to try it, was that the treatment of the eggs. For the dark part, remember that you creamed together the butter and sugar at the beginning, and then you separated into 2 bowls, and you used half of it then for the dark batter and half of it for the light batter. Well, what I was intrigued by was the eggs. So you have 2 eggs in this recipe. You have them separated, 2 egg yolks and 2 egg whites. And you were to put the egg yolks in with the dark batter, and the egg whites were to be beaten till stiff peaks and then added into the light batter. And I thought, oh wow, so would the light batter come out much more fluffy? And would the dark batter be much more heavy? But as it turned out, it has a very consistent texture throughout. Has the same kind of little air bubbles in it. And it didn't seem like the dark part was extra dense or anything. So I looked up a little bit about using eggs for leavening, and it said that both have their own, both the egg white and the egg yolk each serve a different purpose in kind of giving good texture to baked goods. But somehow, even though they serve different purposes, it worked out. So that was my experiment there with marble cake from chapter 66. And again, I'll show you a couple of pictures at the end here. So stay tuned just for a split second and you'll see a couple photos. All right. Thank you for joining me. See you next time.